My name's Andrew Heben. I'm currently the project director at SquareOne Villages, a nonprofit creating self-managed communities of cost-effective tiny homes. We're here at Opportunity Village, which was a pilot project that opened in 2013. There's 30 tiny houses here. We have both Conestoga huts and what we call the wood-framed bungalows that are 8x8 and 8x10. So really it's designed to be an intermediate solution to the problem of homelessness, provide a place to be in the absence of more permanent solutions. So we're providing people the opportunity to have a stable, secure place to be, off the ground with a lockable door that they can keep their stuff during the day. The small houses are supplemented with common facilities, so there's a bathroom that has restrooms, shower, and laundry. There's a common kitchen which residents can cook and prepare their own meals. And then we have a 30-foot yurt which sort of serves as a village living room. There's computer access, a pellet stove, and then also an office up front. So the idea is kind of combining a quite small private space, a place to lock the door and to, just recover. I think that's a huge thing. Otherwise, if you look at the issue of homelessness, people are pretty much forced to live their entire lives in the public realm, and that can really wear a person down. Even though it's a small space, I think it's an infinite improvement in terms of not having any private space. Connecting that with the common buildings, I think balances that out and creates a decent place to live.
Well, I pulled it out from under my bed and off the shelves. So I moved it out here so I could move around inside to do the painting and not worry about it getting on there. See, my tiny house in progress. Taken and started painting it to make it gray so that I can have a fresh, clean look. SquareOne Villages, to do this and be so willing to help is unusual as far as I'm concerned, because you don't see that kind of care about those of us who are unhoused. Most people just go, oh, them, and you're just kind of ignored or put down or ridiculed, and this makes it a whole different. You're no longer one of those people that everybody puts down. It gives a sense of pride, and helping out around the village and everything gives you that sense of ownership. So you take more pride in your own place and the place you're living, and it's a great way to help those who need that step up to get to where they can take the next step and do the things they need to do to get their life back into order so that they can make that transition into permanent housing and back into society. And I think it's very, very important for people to have that. Yeah, I'm trying to freshen my place. I'm painting the inside, and I've got materials to make some insulated curtains so that I can block out the light and the cold. And just want to get it fixed up, make it homey so it feels comfortable and reflects my personality. So that's what I've been doing. The open house that we're having here on Saturday, my house is a tour house. So I've really got to get busy and get it done.
about getting similar projects going. We really hope to expand this to make it not just this area, but statewide, up and down the West Coast. And
your garden looks...
Welcome to my little tiny house. I want to make it more my own, to reflect my personality and how I feel about things. And so I have been purchasing little items over a period of time, and I like the idea of the color gray because you can put any color with it and it looks good. So I went ahead and I bought the lavender sheets to make the bed skirt, and then I used them to make the padded drapes so that it insulates in the wintertime to help keep the cold out. I put up shelves so I'd have more storage space. Got the little baskets, and they were white and I wanted lavender, so I spray painted them, made them lavender, and just put my little knickknacks up and around. So it says more Alice than homeless.
I think the biggest thing that it provides is its physical stability, in that it gives those of us who are transitioning from having to survive every single day, just be in survival mode, to living comfortably in a safe structure and paying bills. It's not necessarily an easy transition, and I feel like, if nothing else, this is it's like the perfect in-between for that. It sort of builds you up to get back in the frame of mind you need to be successful when you do get to have your own housing again.
So I think the self-governance of the community is a huge reason why we've had the success that we've had. So we opened in 2013 here at Opportunity Village, and there were a lot of concerns at the time when we first presented the idea. Neighbors and city officials, I think, had the assumption that it would result in an increase in crime and violence in the area, but we persuaded them to give us a chance, and they gave us a one-year pilot project. After that pilot project, the police reported that it hadn't been an impact in terms of crimes. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that in a self-governed community, you have a say over how your housing is operated and managed, which I think is a rare thing, not just for somebody that's coming out of homelessness, for people in general. You know, a lot of us live in rental housing where, you know, you don't really have any input in your housing. And I think even though, you know, people don't financially own these structures here, because they're involved in a process, they go to a village meeting to discuss policies and procedures, and they don't, you know, if this place wasn't to exist, they'd have nowhere else to go. And so what I found in my research here and throughout the country is that if you give a group of people that ability to have a sense of ownership over the place in which they live, they tend to take pride in it and protect it just like anybody else would in their neighborhood. And that's what we've seen here. And I think that's really kind of the thing that's broken down a lot of the stereotypes that you think of.
Especially with the toolbox, that's amazing. Be like, hey, is this a great?
Yeah, well, yeah, very formal. Yeah, being on set there and hearing the speech. I somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but seriously say this is a gated community for the homeless. You know, the rich get gated communities. Why shouldn't the homeless have a gated community? And when they have that ability to control their borders and who's allowed in and so on and so forth, it works just in and of itself.
By having people living here 24/7, the front desk up there is staffed 24/7 by our residents, has added actually more eyes on the street and more eyes on the area, which has resulted in a safer area. We've actually had one of our residents was on a front front desk duty overnight, and the building across the street, a single-family house, caught on fire. There was a woman in a wheelchair on the second floor, and the person at the front desk was able to see that, call the 911, and the fire department was able to come out and rescue that woman, and was credited with saving 2 lives. So I think that's just an example of, you know, how it can actually create a safer environment, not only not create a violent situation.
I try to do my best to help out around here. I'm on the council, and I'm also on the vetting committee, who sees who we let in and don't let in. And then I also work with the oversight committee, or they're now called the Village Support Committee, which is members of the board from SquareOne. And we work together to try and decide what's best for the village. The whole idea is making the village capable of running itself and dealing with the problems that arise, personality conflicts, that kind of thing. And they give us guidance, but they let us make the decisions. Just kind of cool and kind of hard at the same time sometimes.
So some of the fears that you have, like communicating as a group, sharing other people's ideas, being on a council or some type of committee, it shows you that maybe there's some skills that you left behind in Arrested Development, you know, that you didn't really know you had. The way I used to do things is just kind of like bulldoze through everything, and then whatever's left over when I get to the other end, I'll use it. And so here they teach you how to be diplomatic and be like human, you know, treat everybody, you know, with respect. And sometimes you deal with difficult issues, but you still, it's part of society, and it's the way society functions. You have to be diplomatic. So I think it's helped out a lot in various ways.
Emailed me and wants to speak. Okay, I'm adding him to the program.
The thing that I think people tend to overlook when they hear that we have to always be dealing with interpersonal relationships and conflict resolution and that stuff, the thing that people tend to overlook is just how successful a self-governing community of homeless people can actually be. You know, we're not telling them what they have to do. They've agreed to certain rules, community rules that they're going to live with, and they govern with those rules, and we stand to support them in that.
I think there's a nugget in this, no matter how good we get at tiny housing. I think there's a nugget in this about how we help people learn to live with other people again after they've gone on for such a long time not doing that. And I think it's a really important human thing to do. So I don't know how this will play out in the world, but it's more than the housing. It is having shelter and a safe place for your belongings, but more than anything, it's having other people around you feeling safe and being able to think about how you can put your life back together again, and having people support you in doing that.
And if we're all quiet for a second, it's like this all the time. It's quiet. There's not a lot of chaos going on. And it's hard. You can't find a quiet place most of the time. Anywhere, you know? So I appreciate that too. But you know, like we say, we know that we all wound up here somehow. We all came from somewhere. And so we all have a story to tell. Nobody just like woke up and left their big house and applied at Opportunity Village. That didn't happen. So you got to understand that everybody's in a transitioning. And you know, and it just makes us more compassionate.
Again, there is the issue of being in the survival state of mind every day, which can make it very difficult to allocate the time and energy needed to actually successfully become stable again. Because not only does that just not magically happen when somebody decides I want to get a job, because there's a lot more nuances than that. But also there is a lot of, it seems, criminalization of being houseless. A lot of really arbitrary city policies have became enacted and have certainly made it more difficult for generally houseless people to find safe places to sleep and not be bothered, or just generally be free to move around.
October of this year would be 2 years since I lost my apartment, and we didn't know where to go. You can't live outside on the streets and expect to go to work or know that your stuff's going to be okay. And so we applied for this place, and we were accepted a couple of times. The first 2 times we didn't make it, but on the third go around, we just pushed it. And it's kind of scary to be in a community environment, you know, where you have freedoms. Some people need a lot of structure. So
I was, basically I was kicked out of my parents' house when I was 18, and that had to do with, of course, like my sexuality, and I wasn't even coming out as trans then. I haven't done that to them yet, but oh boy, when I do that to them, oh, I don't know how that's gonna go down. I feel as though people, just folks like myself who have gender dysphoria, we need to get a certain kind of support for that, and I feel like we have a unique kind of niche of difficulty with getting everything that we need to be emotionally healthy when we're just surviving out on the streets. I don't know what to expect from all this going forward, but it's yet another little portion in which I'm really grateful that I at least have this safe space for right now, so that I can kind of work on myself and get to where I'm really comfortable, wherever that is.
So I think it's interesting we use the term homeless. That was a common thing that I asked folks at the tent camps that I visited was, do you consider this home? And most everybody I asked did. And so I think home is more than just a physical structure. It's a place to be. It's a sense of belonging, I think, is what a lot of people talk about when they talk about home. Safety, security, yeah.
What we've discovered is that probably a third of the folk on the street do not need a lot of other assistance other than just shelter, just basic shelter. And that's, first of all, the easier group to serve, because you don't have to invest a lot of money into staffing, into, you can give them a place to live and they can do fine on their own. And then you have a third of your folk who do have significant mental health issues, addiction issues. Those folks also need to be served. And what we have learned, and this is no secret nationwide, is the model of housing first, that you can't expect someone living on the street to deal with their mental illness or their addiction issues before you give them housing. Doesn't work. And so the only way to address those issues is to give them housing first, and then you work harm reduction, try to lower the drug use or alcohol use, you work on the mental health issues and help them to become healthier. so that they can remain stable. And in the process, you actually save your community money, because now they're no longer being arrested, they're no longer going to ER, using all of the resources. So it's a win-win. The problem is finding the money to get it started.
Like with everybody else, stereotypes don't work very well. And you may have read something in the media or seen something in a public square that is an example of some kind of behavior that you don't like, but to attribute that across a population is really not a very good idea. And that's one of the learnings out of Opportunity Village, is that there are people here with a lot of skills, a lot of capability. They've had some hard luck along the way, but many of them could be in the place of housed people very easily, and have been housed people previous to some bad experience in life. And that helping people to transition into a stable living environment, I think is critical for every community. Every community needs to see that this can be done, and it can be done without, pumping billions of dollars into it.
I believe that our program is one of the most cost-effective shelter programs in the country, because we built this with just a little over $200,000, but only half of that was cash. Half of it came in kind contributions, so for less than $100,000. But even if you take that, I think it's $212,000 to build this project, and you amortize those expenses over 5 years, and then you include all of our utility costs and operation costs and very minimal staff, because it's a self-governed village. We do have a little bit of staffing that we provide and support. That comes out to $5 a night per person, and the villagers themselves pay $1. So our net cost is $4 a night per person. So find me any other shelter in the country that is running on less than $4 a night per person. I'd be surprised if it exists anywhere.
And then this here is a black cherry tomato. And then, of course, lavender, and then 2 different kinds of strawberry plants. And then my raspberries. It's hard to find a place with only making approximately $900 a month. And it's like the housing prices are so outrageous. And they want first, last, and all kinds of deposits and whatnot. And it's just, I'm so grateful for having Opportunity Village, and then being able to move over when Emerald Village finishes getting built. I'm excited about that. Excited not to have to share a bathroom with 35 people. I mean, don't get me wrong, I am totally grateful for this place. It was just a stepping block to help us get on our feet, per se, and save a little bit of money, and yeah.
Well, this is such a crisis in every community. In fact, I was just reading some articles in Seattle and Los Angeles and so many places that are in a crisis. And here's what I've come to learn as the real kind of the core essence of this crisis. When we built, first of all, there's a homeless crisis in most cities. And Eugene has one of the highest per capita unsheltered populations in the country. So we have that crisis of just individuals living on the street, but there's also the larger crisis of just not enough affordable housing. And when we built Opportunity Village, our intent was only to do transitional housing. We were going to concentrate on getting people off the street. It never occurred to us that we needed to build affordable housing. After we had moved people into Opportunity Village helped them stabilize their lives. People now were able to get jobs, line up other sources of income, but couldn't find any place to rent.
Emerald Village, we came up with the concept shortly after finishing Opportunity Village. There was a lot of excitement, and we found Opportunity Village to be a big success, and rather than duplicating this model, we wanted to sort of create the next iteration of this model. And so while Opportunity Village is designed to be transitional housing, we wanted to create a more accessible and sustainable place to transition to. And so the vision for that kind of evolved into Emerald Village, which would be permanent tiny houses built on foundations. Each house would have its own bathroom and kitchen, and would meet the International Residential Code's definition for a permanent dwelling. And then we'll also have a larger common building with a meeting space, laundry room, and other stuff like that.
It's a great way, I think, to help those of us who are extremely low income be able to afford a place that is nice and that you're off the streets. You get to have the heat, and you've got your own bathroom, and you've got a small kitchenette to cook in. And having that security and knowing that I can stay there for the rest of my days, unless you've been out there and had to live that never knowing from one day to the next where you're going to be, what's going to happen to you. Once you live that, this is a major improvement, and that's like a giant leap forward.
Homelessness didn't exist forever. It wasn't until the 1980s until it really started to exist on the scale it did, and that was because of a shift in the way that we built housing and the way that we funded housing, and it's really sort of a structural issue. And so I'm interested in how can we create more types of housing for different types of people. Currently we have the single family house and the apartment building, and I think there's a lot of interest in different types of housing. I see the tiny house movement as an opportunity to really blur the lines between the housed and the unhoused. So that's what I write about a lot in my book. And so I think you first had the popularization of the tiny house movement as a means to downsize from a larger single family house, either for economic reasons or for just a desire to live simply. And what I've been more involved in is the other side, is so a tiny house is actually a step up for a number of people in our country currently living in tents or on the streets. And so I think there's been a little bit of resistance to that, in the whole conversation of like, well, some people in the tiny house movement might not want the stigma of homeless people associated with the tiny house. But I think, as we're showing with the Emerald Village project, there's ways to do it in which I think it can be an example of attractive housing that would be of interest to anyone.
In the years that Opportunity Village has been operating, I think all of our hopes and our dreams for that model have happened and more. Not only have a number of folks been through the Opportunity Village model and transitioned out into other kinds of housing, employment, and self-sufficiency, which is exactly what we wanted that to do. But the model has continued its self-sustaining, self-governing role, which I think is important. So we would love to be able to do more Opportunity Village models, but once again, with an eye toward the continuum, is move from the budget bungalow Opportunity Village model into more of the self-contained, hooked up to electricity, being able to provide water and plumbing, Emerald Village model, which is built more around the tiny house concept.
And we're all working together to create a vision for a more humane society that makes it possible for people to live decently who do not have, the six-figure incomes. We've got to figure out a way to do this as a society, or we will fail. And so it's just exciting to be a part of this process and to discover new models to create decent shelter for people all across the spectrum.
Thank you for watching our video and for stopping by Tiny House Expedition. I'm Alexis.
And I'm Christian. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
And for more tiny home tours and stories, click the videos below.
And join us on Patreon for bonus content,
including face-to-face conversations with us. We hope to see you there.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one.